Hello, students. Right. My name is Dr. Professor Rank 1 Twitchful Gladiator Chewthefat, and today... Oh, there we go. Today, I'm gonna teach you all about Shadow Priests for patch 7.3 when it comes to Arena. Are we all excited? Goody, let's get started. First of all, we gotta mention talents. And on the first tier, we have a choice between Twist of Fate, Fortress of the Mind, and Shadow Word Void. And the choice is an illusion. Fortress of the Mind and Shadow Word Void are not even close to Twist of Fate. Twist of Fate not only gives you stronger executes, but you can also keep Twist of Fate up throughout the game for quite a long time. I have a different course on this, aka a different video, check the description, where I go in depth about how you can keep Twist of Fate up for a very long time throughout the game. Our next set of talents is all about mobility. So we have Mania, Body and Soul, and Masochism. And even though you do have to be a masochist to play a Shadow Priest nowadays, that is not the choice. Instead, we're gonna go for Body and Soul. Not only does it help you kind of crawl a little faster, it's also very nice for when you want to sprint your healer or sprint your allies for whatever reason. Next, we have our crowd control tier, and we have a choice between Mind Bomb, Psychic Voice, and Dominant Mind. On their own, Mind Bomb is the best. For a 1v1 situation like a duel, for instance, Stun is very useful because it allows you to cast. In Arena, Dominant Mind, out of the question, it doesn't even work. And between Mind Bomb and Psychic Voice, it will depend on what kind of comp you play. If you play with someone that has a lot of stuns, you go Psychic Voice. If you play with someone that doesn't have a lot of stuns, then obviously you go Mind Bomb. Next, we have Lingering Insanity, Reaper of Souls, and Void Ray. And I'd like to say we have a choice here, but we don't really have a choice. I tried to make Void Ray work, but it just doesn't work. It's bad. Lingering Insanity and Reaper of Souls are both pretty decent. I feel like Lingering Insanity is better for BGs and RBGs because it helps you do just a lot of damage on the scoreboard, but for actual Arena, Reaper of Souls just is so much better. It allows you to stay in Void form a lot longer, and that's how you're gonna get kills in Arena, by staying in Void form. So for me, Reaper of Souls is just a lot better than Lingering Insanity. Next, we have a very interesting tier. I'm kidding. It's Sand Lane, Auspicious Spirits, and Shadowy Insight. And Shadowy Insight simply pulls ahead in everything. It's more damage, it's more interesting gameplay, it's more insanity. It's great. Now, this next tier is actually interesting, and you have some really good choices. It's between Power Infusion, Misery, and Mindbender, and in my opinion, they're all very viable and all very good with different applications. Most of the time, in 3v3, you'll want to stay Misery. The reason why Misery is so good is because Shadow Priests tend to get focused a lot, and everybody's trying to shut you down. However, you do get small windows when you can get your dots out, and you want to try to get your dots out as fast as possible and keep your dots applied to the enemy consistently. You can, for instance, Mind Bomb the DPS and silence the healer. It's gonna give you 4 seconds of free casting, and in 4 seconds with Misery, you can dot the entire enemy team with both your dots, and that is extremely valuable. Mindbender is a talent I use when I play 2 vs 2 against DPS classes that can purge, for instance Elemental or Enhancement Shamans, Mages, and other Shadow Priests. The reason is I can't play Power Infusion because they will generally just dispel it very fast. Mindbender allows you to stay in Void form for a very long time. You can get up to 40 stacks of Void form with Mindbender, and it also offers a pretty decent 1 minute cooldown burst. However, the strongest talent on this tier on paper is Power Infusion. Power Infusion is by far our strongest cooldown, and if you pair it with other cooldowns like Shadow Fiend and Void Torrent, it will do insane amounts of damage. The problem with Power Infusion is, well, you lose Misery. And now, if I may, I'd like to share a clip of Power Infusion in action. I want to hit Pala a little bit. I have so much damage for Pala, it's actually crazy. I'll get. MD. Stop. As you can see, Power Infusion can be extremely devastating, and it can win games on its own. But realistically, you will probably want to stay Misery in most cases. Finally, we have Legacy of the Void, Shadow Crash, and Surrender to Memes. And the choice is pretty obvious. Shadow Crash is kinda useless, it doesn't do a lot of damage, and it moves very slow. Doesn't generate a lot of insanity either, it's kinda bad. And Surrender to Memes, you can't even spec that in Arena or rated BGs because it's a 10-minute cooldown. So Legacy of the Void is actually pretty decent, and it's the only choice. And now, seeing how this is a PvP lesson, I believe it's appropriate to go over the PvP talents really quick as well. And on the first tier, we've got Medallion, aka Trinket, Adaptation, and Relentless. And I personally never swap out of Gladiator's Medallion. The main reason for that is you need to line it up with Void Shift to either save yourself or an ally, or to escape Smoke Bomb, because rogues want you dead. On the second tier we have Train of Thought, Mind Quickness, and Initiation. And again we have zero choice here. Mind Quickness is far superior. You can't play Train of Thought because you're a Pinata, and Initiation is literally worthless in Arena, unless you're doing a very bad job as a Shadow Priest. Next we have Void Shield, Pure Shadow, and Fleeting Embrace. I think Fleeting Embrace is really bad now, and I always stay Pure Shadow. The reason why I stay Pure Shadow is that it allows me to use Dispersion as an offensive cooldown. That's it. Void Shield does make you a little bit tankier overall, but it's not really a big deal. I tried it out and the healing you get from Void Shield is very insignificant. Next we have our Driven to Madness, Void Origins, or Edge of Insanity. And now, since Driven to Madness has been nerfed quite a lot over and over again, Void Origins is the best talent to go for. It makes the gameplay really fluid, really nice. It's awesome. Pick that. Now for the next tier, a lot of people seem to be very confused, so I'm gonna make this very simple for you. If you have one target, Mind Trauma. If you have two targets, Shadow Mania. If you have +3 targets, Psychic Link. If you do decide to play Psychic Link, you have to make sure that you have at least 3 targets dotted with Shadow Word Pain at all times, otherwise the damage is not worth it. You'd be much better off playing Shadow Mania. And I personally do play Shadow Mania in 3v3 in most situations, because I know I won't always have Shadow Word Pain on everyone, because you know there are healers in the game that dispel. Psychic Link however is extremely strong in BGs, it's very good. And finally we have Psyfiend, Last Word, and Void Shift. And again, for 3v3 arena, you will most likely, most of the time, play Void Shift. Psyfiend and Last Word are both really good as well. You always play Psyfiend in 2 vs 2, unless you're fighting 2 DPS, then you want to stay Void Shift. I play Last Word against rot comps, like double Wizards, like double Shadow Priest, or Shadow Priest Affliction Warlock, because in those situations, Psyfiend would die too easily, and Void Shift is useless. And now for the second part of our lesson, I believe it's time for a field trip. Good. Now that we're here, let me show you. Get out of my face. Excuse me, sorry about that. Let me show you this video from back in Mist of Pandaria. The way to maximize your win chances is not necessarily by doing the most damage you can. Wrong! This is Legion. It's all about damage. And luckily, Shadow Priests do a lot of damage. So what you want to do as a Shadow Priest, it's pretty straightforward. You just want to go in and DP dot everything. You apply Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain to the entire enemy, and then you Mind Blast on cooldown. You always Mind Blast on cooldown. When everyone has dots and your Mind Blast is on cooldown, then you can press Mind Flay. Your first Mind Flay you play in an arena will always spawn a tentacle. That's because tentacles have an internal cooldown, and all internal cooldowns reset once arena starts. So your first Mind Flay is going to always spawn a tentacle. Now there are two things you can do with this tentacle. Some priests want to use Mind Flay straight away so that they get their tentacle as soon as possible, so it helps them get to Void Form as soon as possible. That makes sense. However, if you play against a comp where you know you're gonna get to Void Form fast anyway, you might want to save your first Mind Flay for when you actually get into Void Form. That way, your tentacle is gonna do more damage, and it's gonna keep you in Void Form for a longer period of time. That's a very small thing, it's a detail, you probably forgot about it already, but there you have it. The first Mind Flay is always gonna spawn a tentacle. Almost. So what happens once you have full insanity and you're ready to go in Void Form? Oh, you've gotta be kidding me. So once you have enough insanity to go into Void Form... What are these? So once you have enough insanity to go into... There's plenty to choose from. So once you have enough insanity to go... So as I was saying, when you're finally ready to go in Void Form and you have your insanity, what you want to do is you want to basically maximize the insanity you generate in Void Form in order to stay in Void Form for as long as possible. The reason you want to stay in Void Form for as long as possible is mass hysteria, that's it. So it says every 1 second Void Form increases damage dealt by your dots by 2%, and it stacks until Void Form ends. That means that at 30 stacks of Void Form, so 30 seconds in Void Form, all of your dots will deal 60% more damage. And that's good, because what you want is to do damage and kill your opponents. So the way you maximize your insanity generation while in Void Form is by following these steps. So first, when you're finally ready to go in Void Form, you want to make sure that all of your targets have dots. This is not gonna be 100% always the case, but generally you want to have dots on everyone. Then you can hit your Void Form. It's gonna be instant, so it's great. And once you're in Void Form, your priority becomes Void Bolt first, then you gotta make sure you keep your dots, so if your dots fall off or they get dispelled, you want to always refresh your dots after you Void Bolt. Then you want to make sure you use your Shadow Word Death, actually, then Mind Blast, and then Mind Flay. And that's it. It's a pretty simple priority system. Just use that and you'll be good to go. However, this is only some basics. In actual games, you will have to use some cooldowns in order to get cooldowns or to score kills. Now, some of your big cooldowns are Shadow Fiend, and actually your only cooldowns are Shadow Fiend, Power Infusion, Psy Fiend, and also Dispersion if you play with Pure Shadow, as you should. So now that we have the basics out of the way, I'm going to teach you how to burst. In order to burst efficiently, you have to overlap as many cooldowns as you can. Now in Arena and in a realistic situation, the only thing you'll be able to do is Shadow Fiend, because usually you play Void Shift and usually you play Misery, so you don't have access to the other tools that I'm gonna show you. If you feel confident, you can use Dispersion offensively if you're playing Pure Shadow to get at least 6 extra seconds of Void Form. That's a lot of damage, but again, that's only if you feel safe. So generally speaking, the way you want to burst is gonna be you just Shadow Fiend and then you go into Void Form. Shadow Fiend lasts for 30 seconds and a good Void Form will be about 30 seconds. And your Shadow Fiend does scale with your haste, so that's why you want to do it as soon as you hit Void Form. Just think of Shadow Fiend as an extra dot on the target. It's a 3-minute cooldown dot though, so watch out with that. But right now I'm going to show you the maximum damage possible that a Shadow Priest can deal. I just need to wait 36 seconds. But let's get in position. I'm gonna do it on these target dummies because the dwarves die way too fast. So first of all, just as I said, this is not very realistic because in arena you won't be able to free cast as much and use all these cooldowns that I'm using. So it's good to have some dwarves attack me because I want to be in PvP combat. So I'm just gonna have that guy attack me for free basically. Alright, so you want to make sure you have dots on all your targets. Let's just say we have 2 targets for this example. Then you go into Void form. Again, this is not very realistic. Usually I would use Psyfiend and Shadow Fiend right now, but for the sake of just showing you the most damage possible, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to chill until I have around 10 stacks. So I have around 10 stacks. Now I'm going to use my Shadow Fiend because I expect to stay in this Void form for approximately 40 seconds. Now at around 20 I'm going to use my Power Infusion, and Power Infusion is going to allow me to stay in Void form a lot longer. Now I need some sort of PvP boost here, so I'm going to attack that dwarf. So we're still in Void form. Now I'm going to use my Psyfiend at the end of my thing basically. You can also use a Void Torrent here, and then I can offensive disperse, come out of dispersion and still DPS. Apparently, you know, I did more damage than I thought because I'm in PvE gear and I managed to reach 50 stacks apparently. But in a PvP situation you won't be able to reach that many stacks. And what I just showed you as the most damage a Shadow Priest can deal in PvP, it's unrealistic because you will never be able to free cast as much. So again, usually the burst you're gonna do is just Shadow Fiend when you go in Void form. Never ever Shadow Fiend randomly when you're not in Void form, because that's a waste. Okay. Oh, now I can show you how to apply everything. Put everything we learned in practice. Again, I don't have dispersion now, so that's pretty bad. Well, shit. That's why you don't want to use dispersion offensively, unless you know you're fine and you're not gonna die 100%. Now there is one important thing I want to mention in this lesson, and for that I'm actually going to Spirit Res. I think it's actually better that I Spirit Res, because now those dwarves won't die as easily. So these are some general tips, but I wish someone mentioned these to me when I was learning. The idea of momentum is extremely important and probably the most important lesson I can give you for this guide. You want to seize momentum early and don't let it go. Okay, it's just like Eminem said. So the way you do that, I can show you some examples of how you can do that. One of them is Mind Bomb and Silence. A lot of times you won't have time to do much because you get trained like this and stunned forever. But especially if you play Misery, which I'm not right now, so I'm gonna pop Power Infusion just to simulate Misery kind of. You want to, you know, go early, okay? So you want to stun these guys, silence the healer, and start casting your dots. So now you have some pressure going. That's it. That's all I wanted to say really. It's just press your cooldowns early, because if you don't, you're gonna have a terrible time. Again, as a Shadow Priest, if you fall behind, it's really difficult to actually come back in the game, and you have to crawl all game long. So you have to always play offensive, always push on top of. Please allow me this short intermission here, because I don't think I explained what I wanted very clearly. This is not all about staying offensive and necessarily staying on top of people, although that is helpful in a lot of situations. You don't always want to do that, obviously, but what I'm trying to say is you have to get your dots rolling as soon as possible. You can't just fake cast forever, for instance. You can't hold on to your cooldowns forever. That's bad. You want to be very active, and you want to be... It's a very simple concept. You want to have momentum. You want to be on top of them, on top of the enemy, okay? You want them to play defensive. You want them to react to you. If you don't do that, then you're gonna fall behind. And it's really hard to play a Shadow Priest when you're behind. I hope this all makes sense. I tried. You really need the momentum. And I don't really know how I can teach you that. Just all I can say is play offensive and try to seize momentum and seize dots as soon as possible. And don't let it go. Like, if you have dots on everything, keep pumping damage, keep pumping insanity. Because again, if you lose it, if everyone gets dispelled and you wake up with no insanity, it's gonna be really hard to get it back up, especially since everybody in the game is gonna want to shut you down and kick you. That's just the nature of the game. And speaking of mind control, I actually have a different course on some really unique ways in which you can use mind control. I suggest you check that out as well. The link is in the description, by the way. Another thing I could mention that might help you in your journey of becoming a master Twitchful Gladiator Shadow Priest like myself would be the sources of damage that you deal in arena. And for that, I have this screenshot from an arena I played recently. And I remember I took this screenshot because I did very good. And this is the best case scenario. Right here you can see that I did mess up my Shadow Fiend a lot, since Shadow Fiend only did 1.5 million damage. If you pop Shadow Fiend properly and you stay in Void form for 30 seconds ish, it should do a lot more damage. It should be over 2 million damage for sure. So I definitely messed up my my Shadow Fiend there. Everything else looks really nice, and if you can achieve this, if you can aim for that, that's perfect. That's probably with dotting 2 targets though, not 3, because I was playing with a mage. So if you play some different comp and you dot 3 targets, then obviously your Vampiric Touch and your Shadow Word Pain are gonna do a bit more damage than that. But the idea is, it should be Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Mind Flay, and then either your Shadow Fiend or your Void Torrent. And that way you can just keep yourself in check. If your Mind Flay is low, it means you're not Mind Flaying enough. If your Mind Blast is low, you're not Mind Blasting enough. If your Void Bolt is low, that's really bad. That means you're not in Void form long enough. Or, even worse, you're in Void form and you're not pressing Void Bolt. So that way you can check yourself and see what you're doing wrong. Where is that Demon Hunter? Ah, look at that. Demon Hunters are notorious for being very strong 1v1. But is he strong enough? I mean, all these dwarves don't really know. He didn't even notice. Oh, that's so sad. He actually didn't notice that he's dying. Interesting. Got him. Oh, and also, it's very important once you kill someone as a Shadow Priest, it's very important to assert dominance. So that others will know, and they will fear you. Well, this guy is a Fury Warrior with 6.2 million HP. Attacking this guy would be literal suicide. Unless I attack him from here. Oh, that's bad. Uh-oh. Okay, if I attack this guy, the warrior is definitely gonna come and help him. So I want to kill this guy, but I also want to make sure I don't die to the warrior. Ah, there we go.
何お前はもう死んでいる。
Class dismissed.